Hello everyone. This is just a really quick video I'm making based on iron golem farms and the plan for the pit in Caledonia, of course. I figured it would be easier to get all my thoughts into one video here as opposed to discussing it over text, which I think could get pretty convoluted. Yeah, this is unscripted, so sorry if it's a little rough. I'm also a little sick right now, so sorry if I sound congested or hoarse. That's all I got. Getting into it here. Roman's iron golem farm that he sent claims to make about 4,500 iron per hour, which is just not true, quite frankly. Maybe it was in an old update that the guy tested it. Maybe he didn't test it. If you look in the description of the video, it's actually someone else's farm that he's just giving a tutorial for. So yeah, I have no idea where the 4,500 iron an hour comes from. I don't believe that's possible, and especially not from a farm like that. Could have been done in a past update where you could make that much iron, very possible, right? But regardless, 4,500 is not, it's just not possible from a farm of that size with that many villager modules. So I tested this. This is, in theory, one module of that farm, right? I'm going to be calling this little quarter of it, right? This is one module. This is what I'm going to be calling one module here, right? Zombie and some villagers. This is, in theory, a slightly more efficient version of one of those modules. Uses ice. I want to say it makes the golems go faster, but I don't know for sure. But it gets them out of the detection radius sooner. We'll get to that in a second. And this produces 408 iron an hour, just this module, which if you extrapolate that, it would be 1,632 iron an hour from 4 modules put together like this, right? I did some testing. I'm not just pulling those numbers out of my ass, I promise. Excuse me. And so then I tested this farm afterwards. I got a schematic of Jade's farm, which is the one from the video, and I tested it. I know there's no zombie right there, but I promise there was when I tested. And this produced about 1,500 iron an hour, which is basically what I calculated, right? A slightly less efficient version of that guy over there. And I predicted 1,600, right? A little less, 1,500. Makes sense, right? This is 1,500 iron an hour. Like I said, tested it a couple different times. I promise it's accurate. The farm that I had in mind, this is my usual iron farm. I've been using this for a while now. I believe it was designed by Nembon, although correct me if I'm wrong, please. I know they used it on Psycraft a good amount. Regardless, it uses a pillager. A pillager has a greater detection radius than a zombie, or a scare radius, excuse me, than a zombie. So the villagers, you can fit actually 4 modules in the detection radius of one pillager here. And if you don't know, you can pacify a pillager by just having them shoot their crossbow until it breaks. You can't do this with skeletons, but with pillagers you totally can. And they become totally passive. They don't attack you or anything. They barely walk around. It's very useful, especially for iron golem farms. And because of their greater scare radius, right, you can fit 4 modules of 3 villagers in here. And so this little guy gets you 1,100 iron an hour, rounding down. Right? So this takes up, same space as this, but it gets like over double the rates, right? 2.5 times the rates. Another reason why this one over here is a little more efficient than the zombie-based one is because of how the villagers go to bed at night. They sleep, right? With the zombie-based design over here, zombie in the bubble column, he'll be bouncing up and down all night, right? And these villagers will stop seeing him, go to bed, start seeing him, wake up, stop seeing him, go to bed, right? Over and over all night long. While villagers are in bed, they cannot spawn iron golems. And so the more time you have villagers in bed, actually the less iron you will get out of your iron farm. And so this little redstone device up here, in the middle of the night, it'll just push these glass blocks down for a second. All of the villagers will no longer be scared. They'll go to bed, and then it'll pull the glass back up, and all of the villagers will then get out of bed. They'll count as having slept, but they will spend the littlest time possible in their beds, which means more time for spawning golems. And so for these reasons, I decided to use this one for our design in the pit. And then really quick, another thing is that Roman, I know you initially planned to stack all of these on top, but if you have all of them pointing to the same like drop chute here, it actually lowers your rates a good amount. If all of the golems come to like one central funneling point. And that's because villagers, they have a box. Hold on, give me 1 second here. This is Nembon's carpet mod here. It has a lot of really useful tools and features. So if you look at these white boxes here, around each villager. This is its iron golem detect radius, golem detection. And if there's any golem within the white box here, the villagers will not spawn new golems. But there's a little bit of nuance to how this works, right? So if there is a golem here, the next time that a villager would attempt to spawn a golem, it just skips the attempt, right? And then it's just an entirely wasted spawn, where you could have had a golem and you just didn't. And it'll cool down and everything, like the villager count gets reset and everything, just like it did spawn a golem, except you get no iron. So you really want to try to avoid this at all possibilities. Getting the golems out as soon as possible is really one of the greatest goals of an iron farm. And of course there are portal-based designs, but we're not getting into portal-based designs. I don't think any of us want a multi-dimensional iron farm. It takes up space in the nether, which could lead to us getting found. It's just kind of a hassle. You need to have a player to load both sides. It's, pain in the ass, right? But yeah. So if you stack all of these, the golems falling down will trigger. They'll be in the radius of these villagers for just a second, and we will get some wasted spawns from the golems falling while the villagers attempt to spawn one, and it'll just skip that attempt, and we'll just get -1 golem. You know what I mean? So stacking them in that regard is actually quite bad. And your reaction to this might be, okay, so if they can't be in the golem detection radius, then why don't we just have a big water stream to push them all away outside of the detect radius, and then we can drop them all? And my answer to that is, in the process of pushing these iron golems with water all the way, outside the detect radius here, just to drop them down a chute, they'll be within your villager's detect radius still the whole time that you're pushing them, which takes a while, as opposed to something like this, right? There's not very far for the golems to go, even in like a worst case farthest spawn possible. It's just a couple blocks there, as opposed to this design here, right? Worst case farthest possible spawn, the golem has like a pretty long ways to go, you know what I mean, until it's out of the detect box. If you guys are really set on having a central water stream to carry all the golems, theoretically we could widen the gap between all of these farms, widen the pit a little bit. That would be necessary for sure. Bump this one a little higher, scoot these ones a little further apart, and we would have space for some golems actually. So if you wanted to drop the golems, have like a little space in between the bounding boxes of the two villages here. So, bring them over, have another space in between the two bounding boxes of the villagers, and then bring them somewhere else to kill them. We could do that for sure, but that would require a good amount of extra effort, and I don't know if you guys are willing to do that, but the option is definitely there, I'll say. So the other option here, as opposed to having all the golems come together at the same spot, is to have an individual kill chamber at each farm, kind of like is laid out here. Let me get rid of the clutter. Right, have an individual kill chamber at each farm, and then we'll have item streams, made of ice and water just for the items and not the golems. Faster kill time on the golems from when they spawn, if that matters, I don't know. But all the items, would then come together and be flushed somewhere else. Theoretically, this is a little more efficient, although I don't know how much it'll matter in practice, just due to the fact that we can squeeze more of the farms together, and that might maybe give us space for one more, layer of farms at the top or something. But I'd have to test it out a little. I didn't prep that much for this. But that's something we can talk about if you guys are interested. But I think that about sums up all my thoughts on the iron farms and the pit and everything. Obviously I know Nirvana said he would do some superfluous additions, which I always love, but we could make this look a little more cohesive in like one farm. If you guys wanted, we could connect all these with non-golem spawnable blocks. We got a lot of options available to us. It doesn't have to look like a bunch of tiny farms stuck in a pit, so to speak, right? But yeah, this is my first time doing a video like this. Thanks for watching, I guess. If anyone sees this and you're not from Jericho or whatever, if you're just some person browsing the internet, hi and thank you for watching, I guess. I hope you found it interesting. Yeah, that's all I got.